PDL Season 9, Week 2. I'm really enjoying this Generation 8 Sword and Shield season so far. It really takes me back to my VGC roots, and there are a lot of very different Pokemon and strategies from what we're used to now in Scarlet and Violet. We saw some crazy techs already last week, so here's hoping for more. Here are the standings. Once again, this is exactly the same table as in Monday's video. I do get tired of saying that every week, and I'm thinking about whether I want to do this differently somehow, but I do like having the standings in both of them. I don't know, I'm thinking about it. In any case, standings as of the end of Week 1, and as I said before, ahead of any coaches potentially having any feelings about the order of the standings here, I go win-loss record, then game differential. That's how the official standings work, and then I don't know what tiebreaker there is, if any, after that, so it's just alphabetical order. And if you have the same record and the same differential as somebody else, everything comes down to how you named your teams. Anyway, half the league undefeated, obviously. That's how it goes after Week 1, but 5 teams with perfect differential as well. We do know already that one of those teams is no longer undefeated after this week, as we saw in Monday's video. Go check that out if you haven't yet for the result. But we're going to see what the other teams can do, and I do not remember, even as I've set up the replays to go through, what the matchups are, so I don't know what the maximum number of undefeated teams is after this week. But obviously everyone's still in it. It's only been 1 week. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. With that said, there are a few trades to go through. I think I got all of them, but coaches, let me know in the comments if I missed any. It starts with Pendragon United dropping Vileplume and picking up Ribombee. I called out in the draft recap that this team had 3 different Chlorophyll users, with Leafeon being more of a physical attacker, Exeggutor more of a special attacker, and Vileplume more of a support. But it is down to 2 now, and the coach mentioned in the Discord that they drafted Vileplume thinking that it could get Rage Powder, and found out that it doesn't. So that would seem to be the answer to that. I don't think Ribombee gets Rage Powder either, but let me just check that actually. I probably should have checked before I hit record. But Ribombee does have a lot of other support options, and it's fast, and it's a fairy type, and it has like reasonable offense. It gets Quiver Dance, it gets Moonblast. I don't think it gets Rage Powder. No. But it does get things like Screens, Speed Swap, Pollen Puff, Trick. It just has a lot of different support options, and you can also go offensive with it. I don't know what specific plan there is for Ribombee. I don't know if there is a specific plan, or they just decided to pick up a good Pokemon when Vileplume was in fact not delivering what they wanted from it. By the way, Chlorophyll Pokemon that does get Rage Powder in this generation, Tangela, which I have, and Tangrowth, which nobody has, but yeah, Ribombee is a good Pokemon in Sword and Shield. I don't know specifically what they want to do with it, but I think it should be able to put in some work for sure. And I was going to say they didn't have a fairy type yet. That's not true. They have Tapu Lele. Ribombee's still good. Up next, we have the Windsor Whiscash dropping Toxicroak and picking up Circuitry. If I remember correctly, they sort of decided after Week 1 that Toxicroak was just a little bit redundant on their team. They already have another water immunity in Gastrodon. They have a fighting type in Grapploct and also Blaziken. They have 2 fighting types. They have faster offense already. It wasn't really clear that Toxicroak was bringing a lot to the table, or at least that's what I think this coach decided. And again, I don't know if there's a specific plan for Circuitry, but it's a very strong Pokemon. It has like base 173 special attack and can boost that higher with Beast Boost. So if Toxicroak is not really bringing that much to the table, just swapping it out for one of the most powerful Pokemon that you can get to replace it is a pretty solid start, right? And Circuitry is a Pokemon that should not need a ton of support to put in work, although with Pokemon like Sableye supporting it, with screens or speed control, even things like Blaziken setting up with the speed boost, Pikachu with the fake out, I could see this team definitely creating some openings for Circuitry to go crazy, and it gives them a little bit more immediate offense that they don't necessarily have when like Galarian Moltres probably wants to set up with Nasty Plot or get a Berserk boost or even Max Airstream and play a bulkier game. Right, but they get big burst damage on the special side now as well with Circuitry, so it's a Pokemon that I think slots really nicely onto this team and makes them a little bit more dynamic and hard to prepare for sure. So definitely a step up over Toxicroak, I think, although Toxicroak isn't bad. Then we have the East Coast Espurr dropping Ferrothorn and picking up Drifblim. This one is interesting to me because Ferrothorn is definitely a very good Pokemon in this format. It's maybe a little bit trickier to make work in Draft than in, like, actual VGC 2022 because everyone knows to bring Fire-type moves against you, but Ferrothorn is very bulky, very tanky. It can set up with Iron Defense and click Body Press. It has some support options available to it. I'm going to be very interested in seeing whether anybody else picks this up. I will admit I've thought about it myself, but I just don't really have room for it in my points budget. I don't think it's... I can't pick it up without cannibalizing an important part of the rest of my team. But I do wonder how long Ferrothorn will really be sitting in the undrafted Pokemon pool this season, whether it makes it to the end or whether someone else decides to grab it. It was very strong in VGC 2022. I do think it's a little bit trickier in Draft because it's not the hardest Pokemon to prepare for, but it's definitely one that you have to respect or else you'll get punished. That said, they already have a strong Grass type on this team in Rillaboom. They have some slow, tanky Pokemon already. I mean, they can do... they don't really have that much for slow, tanky Pokemon, but I mean, Rillaboom, again, can play that role. Maybe Colossal, depending on the set. Alolan Marowak is, you know, more of a slow Trick Room attacker. I can see Ferrothorn's role on this team being kind of expendable compared to some of the other Pokemon. It arguably takes a little bit of a layer away from their very multi-layered draft, but I don't know that it's one of the layers that they were most set up to use well to begin with. And Drifblim brings a ton of support options to the table. It can activate Unburden with a Grassy Seed next to Rillaboom, setting up the terrain. It can set Tailwind or Trick Room. It gets Will-O-Wisp, Strength Sap. It can do Baton Pass shenanigans. We've seen Drifblim put in a lot of work as a support Pokemon in Draft before, and it's kind of an unpredictable Pokemon. It can do a lot of things that are very disruptive to the opponent, and it's something that you have to take very seriously. So I do definitely like what it brings to the table, especially for offensive modes with things like Primarina, Spectrier, Colossal, but I can also see it complementing the Alolan Marowak stuff. We'll see how they use it week by week, but it's a good Pokemon for sure, and it, you know, they have their offense already, so some support and disruption being added is not a bad thing at all for this team. Finally, I believe this is the last trade this week. The Edmonton Empoleons have dropped Bergmite and picked up Cubchoo. So the last trade, but surely not least, right? I have inside information on why they chose to make this trade. I should probably not say it out loud right now because it was told to me privately, so, you know, I don't want to leak. But, you know, this is not a huge impact trade. These are both untiered Pokemon that are probably not doing a lot in any given week, but there was something in particular that has been leaked to me. And we'll see if it comes up at some point during the season. But those are the trades, and now let's jump to the replays. As always, replays in chronological order, except that my own match was covered in Monday's video. This week we're starting with the Elegancy taking on Ryangreenblue. The Elegancy running, well, both of these running what look like Trick Room teams, which makes sense because these are two of the most Trick Room leaning teams in the league this season. Ryangreenblue pretty much fully indexed into hard Trick Room. I'm guessing before I check that Mimikyu and then Melodic are the fastest Pokemon they have here. Yeah, that's correct. And then Magearna. So, not a fast Pokemon to be found. They just want to set up Trick Room with Magearna or Stakataka or Mimikyu. And sweep with their big attackers. There's not a whole lot more to be said about this team. There probably won't be most weeks, although maybe as I get the rosters down more in my head over time, I'll be able to speak to why they made certain Pokemon choices, but we'll see. On the Elegancy side, they have the Liepard for disruptive prankster support. They have their own slow attackers. I'll probably be checking speed matchups fairly often throughout this set, but certainly Magearna is kind of unusually fast in this matchup because it's actually not all that slow for a Trick Room Pokemon. They could have like an Iron Ball or Room Service on it, but Pokemon like Chandelure and Hatterene, maybe, depending on its coverage, are actually pretty threatening into Magearna if Trick Room is up. I don't know what Throw's speed is. It looks pretty slow. And then, of course, the Nidoking was running a Choice Scarf last week, which was interesting for surprising their opponent early in the set, but then kind of had some anti-synergy with the Trick Room stuff later in the set. So we'll see what they do with it this time. But I don't know if the Liepard will make the difference or just relative speed stats. Maybe a speed-lowering item on either side could be a winning surprise here, but let's see what happens. We get Mimikyu and Magearna leading against Chandelure and Liepard. Magearna, excuse me, switches out immediately to Melodic. Ryangreenblue really started their draft with 3 different Pokemon whose names start with M. We'll see how I handle that over the course of the season. But Melodic switches in on a Snarl from Liepard. So Liepard trying to weaken the Magearna there, but might give a competitive boost to Melodic. It does break Disguise. It does give a competitive boost. It's only +1 because there still was the drop. But Melodic also takes an Overheat, so very good switch there for Ryangreenblue. It's also Eject Pack Chandelure, so switching itself out turn 1 for a Escavalier. I was about to say that nobody set Trick Room, and then I realized the turn wasn't over. It was actually just an Eject Pack switch. Mimikyu does in fact set Trick Room, but Escavalier will be the slowest Pokemon on the field right now. It's very threatening into Mimikyu. Not sure it's as threatening into Melodic, but they also still have the Liepard, able to do who knows what. Escavalier goes straight for the Dynamax as Melodic protects. We get an Encore. We get an... Okay. We get an Encore from Liepard, looking to force Mimikyu to reverse the Trick Room, which is interesting when the Escavalier is so threatening in Trick Room. Escavalier goes for Max and Knuckle to boost its attack. That'll go into Melodic, obviously, since Mimikyu is immune. Doesn't do much through the Protect, and I forgot while I was talking through so many things and distracted by the chat. They did go for the Encore into Mimikyu, but Mimikyu turned out to have the... Is it Mental Herb? Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't remember that Mental Herb also stops Encore. I just remember it as the taunt blocking item. But Mimikyu is not forced to reverse the Trick Room. Instead, it burns Escavalier with Will-O-Wisp. So a lot of back and forth positioning so far, just as you'd expect from this matchup. But that use of Dynamax by the Elegancy is not looking great now that the Escavalier is burned. Liepard shows its third move is Yawn, clicks that into Melodic. Magearna comes back in. Melodic takes a Max Knuckle. Still does a third. Escavalier's now at +2 attack, but burned. And we see Coil on Melodic. Coil, competitive stuff. Interesting, bulky threat. Yawn goes into Magearna now. They're going to let Melodic faint to another Max Knuckle. Maybe expecting to survive that, but even then it would have fallen asleep after this turn. Magearna gets a Soul Heart boost. Knocks Liepard down to a Focus Sash with a Fleur Cannon crit that definitely doesn't matter. Now it's at -1. Liepard survives, so no more Soul Heart boost from that. Magearna is drowsy. They can still switch it out. They have 2 Pokemon left. Mimikyu comes back in. Also, Ryangreenblue still has Dynamax available, while the Elegancy does not. But I don't know if this Mimikyu really gets much out of Dynamaxing, especially... I mean, I think an Iron Head is still going to hurt, right? At +3 attack, even with the burn. But Magearna doesn't want to Dynamax right now because it's drowsy, so we'll see what they do. They switch Magearna out to Stakataka. Mimikyu does get knocked out by Iron Head. Snarl misses Stakataka. That's probably not a big deal. Trick Room ends. We get Magearna coming in now, so Escavalier is faster than Stakataka. I'm just assuming like min speed on a lot of these Pokemon. Obviously there could be something else going on. But Magearna is faster than Escavalier. But Escavalier resists Magearna's stabs. It's definitely very threatening into this Pokemon, even when it's outsped. Stakataka Dynamax is here, that makes sense. Magearna takes another Yawn. Stakataka takes that knockoff like it's nothing. We see it as a weakness policy. So probably looking to Dynamax. It's tricky, right? Because Pokemon like Nidoking and Throw are going to hit it hard anyway, but maybe looking to Dynamax and take something like a Drill Run or that Max Knuckle. Or they... Stakataka is so defensive, right? It has such high defense, it could probably, if it's Dynamaxed, can take a double super effective move, but maybe they were looking to activate that with the Melodic or something. I think more... Excuse me, I think more likely it's like a speculative weakness policy, hoping the opponent will activate it, but I don't know. Stakataka uses Max Flare. What fire attack does Stakataka get? Does it get Heat Crash? I don't even know. But it wipes out Escavalier with that. Magearna sets Trick Room back up. Now Stakataka has the advantage in Trick Room. It's the slowest Pokemon in the whole matchup. So Escavalier was doing well in Trick Room before, but yeah, now the tables have turned. Ryangreenblue is the one with the slowest attacker, and it's Dynamaxed, and it's in Trick Room, and in this case, it's not even burned. Nidoking's here. Liepard uses Copycat to reverse the Trick Room. Right, it was always able to do that. I guess it could have done that instead of trying to Encore the Mimikyu earlier, but maybe they were just trying to deny a Will-O-Wisp into Escavalier or something like that. That would make sense. Now they know not to try that next game. But Liepard does also have this option to reverse the Trick Room itself. So now Stack Attack is actually threatened by Nidoking. It does get wiped out by an Earth Power. Not so bulky on the special side. Magearna now gets the +2, though. It takes a KO on Liepard instead of targeting James P. Sullivan. And then it falls asleep. And after that back and forth battle, trading blows throughout, the Chandelure that's been sitting in the back since turn 1 actually does come and close this one out. So the Elegancy, the Escavalier, you know, it got burned early on, but it was still able to stack up those attack boosts and knock out Mimikyu. And from there, with the Liepard manipulating whether or not Trick Room is on the field, and we saw this game that it has a couple of different ways to do that this week, that makes Liepard super helpful on a Trick Room focused team like this, that it can use Copycat to manipulate the Trick Room positioning. But yeah, when Ryangreenblue tried to go for their own big Trick Room attacker, Nidoking and Chandelure were just able to overwhelm. So really well executed there by the Elegancy. It felt like a roller coaster watching it back and forth, but the Elegancy actually had a lot of control over a lot of that game. But we'll see if they can do it again in game 2. Okay. This time it's Mimikyu leading with Magearna. I think that's actually the same as last game against Chandelure and Hatterene. Hatterene, I think, is the only thing different now compared to last game. They had Liepard before, so not having Liepard on the field right away could definitely shake things up. But again, right now the Elegancy have the slower Pokemon on the field, so, probably. We see Gigantamax Hatterene immediately. We see whoever this is. Sending a message to, I assume, Ryangreenblue. Magearna protects on an energy ball, trying to cover the melodic switch in, I guess. Now they know that's potentially coming later. Mimikyu sets Safeguard. I think that is to deny confusion from Gmax Smite. Hatterene's Gmax move, I don't actually remember whether it's Psychic or Fairy type. I think it's Fairy. But, is it confusion that it does? Yeah, Grimmsnarl's Gmax move makes him drowsy. Hatterene's does confusion, I think, and I believe confusion it doesn't show up on the Pokemon screen like poison or burn does, but it is technically a status condition, so I think it should be denied by Safeguard. Hatterene has, however, gone for Max Flare instead. That's an interesting tech, though, the Safeguard Mimikyu. Into Magearna, which takes it pretty well with Protect. Nobody set Trick Room this turn. But Sun is up, and they have this Fire type and this Dynamax threat, so a lot of pressure coming out from the Elegancy right now. Magearna does switch out now to Melodic. Once again, Melodic tanks the Overheat. Not quite as well in Sun. Chandelure will pivot itself out. Liepard will get in. There's the Gmax Smite. It doesn't do any secondary effect. I think that is because the Safeguard is blocking Confusion. Melodic survives it. Mimikyu sets Trick Room. Stack Attack is here now. Stack Attack, giant threat into Hatterene. Should be slower. This is Hatterene's last turn of Dynamax, so that is a well-timed Trick Room from the looks of it to make Stack Attack a threat. Another Gmax Smite will take out Melodic. Safeguard will protect Stack Attack from the secondary effect. The Elegancy's Dynamax wears off. Once again, Ryangreenblue not Dynamaxing until the other side's is worn off. But the Stack Attack should be better positioned now than it was last game, because the Liepard is... the Liepard was on the field when they set Trick Room, so it could have Copycat reversed the Trick Room again, but it didn't do it this time. It went for Snarl into Magearna. No, not Magearna. Into... what was that Snarl for? Covering for a Magearna switch-in, I guess? But now Stack Attack is positioned to go crazy. Let's see. Dynamaxes. Yawn is stopped by the Safeguard. That Safeguard Mimikyu is really coming in clutch so far this game. We didn't see it at all in Game 1, but it's a great Game 2 adjustment. Hatterene shows the Babiri Berry, so it'll survive 1 max Steel Spike, but Stack Attack will boost defenses on both sides. That could be helpful into whatever the Elegancy's third Pokemon is. Not if it's Nidoking, but I mean, it could be into one of the other two. Magearna misses a Fleur Cannon into Liepard. Liepard uses Copycat to copy Fleur Cannon. When have you ever seen a Liepard use Fleur Cannon? I don't know. I guess they just... I don't know what... I guess they just couldn't find anything else to do with Liepard, because... Encore's not useful in this position. Yawn does nothing in this position. I feel like you could get away with switching Chandelure in here, maybe, but maybe you don't want to risk a bunch of damage on it. We don't know what the last Pokemon is, so I guess Liepard just goes for what damage it can get. It clicks Flare Cannon into Stack Attack. That doesn't do very much, but it's pretty funny to see. We get another Max Steel Spike taking out Hatterene. Magearna is now, thanks to Soul Heart, it's at neutral special attack. Flare Cannon will drop it down again, but also knock Liepard to its Sash. But Magearna has taken a lot of damage, actually. And we do see the Escavalier. It comes back in, but it immediately switches out to Chandelure. Magearna protects. Are they trying to bait? I feel like anything Stack Attack clicks into Escavalier is gonna knock out Chandelure. But maybe they're just trying to sack Chandelure to get Escavalier in when it can outspeed Stack Attack. But the Stack Attack has been piling up defense boosts, so I feel like Chandelure is more valuable into it. I don't understand the switch, but we'll see what they're cooking. Oh, I forgot the Stack Attack has Max Flare. That's why I didn't understand the switch. I was thinking it would click Max Rockfall, maybe Max Quake. I forgot it has Max Flare. Still don't know what fire attack it gets. My guess is Heat Crash. So never mind. I apologize for questioning the Elegancy. They get a Flash Fire boost on their Chandelure here. Just as Trick Room wears off, Chandelure will be able to outspeed Stack Attack. Stack Attack is still very healthy. Magearna switches out, Mimikyu back in, Disguise not busted. Stack Attack protects. Liepard goes for an Encore, I guess into the Magearna slot. Trying to lock it into Flare Cannon in front of Chandelure. Okay. Shadow Ball goes into a Protect. Mimikyu is pretty free now to set that Trick Room back up, but Safeguard is worn off. We'll see if Mimikyu clicked it again this turn, but of course with the Prankster priority, Yawn goes into Stack Attack first. I don't actually know this interaction. I think Safeguard will stop... you know what? I'm not going to guess. I don't know whether Safeguard will stop Stack Attack from falling asleep if it's already drowsy before the Safeguard goes up. But also, I think Mimikyu clicked Trick Room, so we won't find out. Nope, it clicked Will-O-Wisp. Trying to get the KO on Liepard, but it misses. Iron-Headed Chandelure does a third. Not bad. Liepard tries to lock Stack Attack into Ironhead, but it doesn't work. Magearna switches in, gets knocked out by Shadow Ball, but Mimikyu gets Trick Room back up. Mimikyu still not even taking a single hit so far in this game. And then we got Stack Attack and Trick Room, but now we don't have Stack Attack and Trick Room because Liepard has copycatted, reversed the Trick Room once again. And Chandelure has a chance to take out the Stack Attack, and does it. And all that's left is Mimikyu. At full HP, it lands the Will-O-Wisp into Liepard this time. If that had landed earlier, Liepard would have fainted before it could reverse the Trick Room. So that Will-O-Wisp mess earlier was huge. But now it's just Mimikyu against Escavalier and Chandelure. And yeah, I think Ryangreenblue takes this game. If that Will-O-Wisp connects, right? The first one. Stack Attack was pretty low. Maybe Escavalier beats it anyway, but if you just wipe Escavalier out with Max Flare, then you probably lose to Chandelure. Unless I'm forgetting something, I think Stack Attack would still have to take a hit from Escavalier. Okay. Maybe the Will-O-Wisp miss is not as big as I thought, but it definitely put to rest any chance of Ryangreenblue pulling this one back. So... And by the way, the Mimikyu shows its last move is Magic Room, which is the field effect that turns off items. What is that for in this game? I don't know. Maybe there's a choice item somewhere that they wanted to make optional for them. A lot of weird text in this game. A lot of fun copycat stuff. The Safeguard Mimikyu I liked a lot. It wasn't enough to win this game, but it kept the Liepard from being too disruptive for a decent while. That was really good. But the Elegancy do take this one, and I do think the big difference maker this week is the Liepard with that Prankster copycat being able to exert a lot of influence over the course of the game on whether or not Trick Room is up at a given time. 2 misses mattered too, for sure. But let's give the Liepard credit where it's due, and let's figure out together what fire move Stack Attack gets. I think it's going to be Heat Crash. But I did not remember that it got a fire move before I saw that Max Flare. That really caught me off guard. Yeah, it is Heat Crash. Makes sense. It's a heavy mod. Okay. Should I look up the Safeguard interaction too? I don't want to spend a bunch of time on Bulbapedia in these videos, but I'm curious now as to whether Safeguard... Safeguard prevents a Pokemon from being made drowsy by Yawn, but will not prevent it from falling asleep due to its effect if it is already drowsy. So I guessed wrong there. That Magirna or whatever it was, Stakataka, whichever mon it was, still would have fallen asleep if the Safeguard had gone back up. The Safeguard was still a cool tech, though. Alright, that was just the first set. Let's keep moving. Next we have the Edmonton Empoleons taking on the Nothing Burger. The Nothing Burger bringing that Ditto, bringing that Mew, bringing that Silvally. You never know what you're getting with those Pokemon. And it's an interesting group otherwise. I see Togetic and Snorlax, and I'm expecting like Belly Drum, Gigantamax Snorlax stuff, which is very strong, but probably wants Trick Room. But Mew then has to be the Trick Room setter. I don't think anything else here gets Trick Room. It could be Trick Room Mew. That's certainly possible. There's no reason that can't be the case. And we saw Trick Room Mew actually look pretty good last week, even though the Nothing Burger ended up losing that set. The Mew was doing its job where it appeared. So I'm definitely most immediately afraid of the Snorlax if I'm their opponent here, but that's partly because who on earth knows what Silvally and Ditto are doing? My guess is Mew is a Trick Room setter, but... And yet with Togetic to support the Snorlax as well, with Follow Me, Eviolite boosted bulk, and a double resistance to any fighting coverage. That's the most obvious threat, but it's partly because some of these Pokemon are so versatile that who on earth knows. And then the Corviknight is there as well. It could be... You know, maybe the Snorlax is a red herring and it's like Bulk Up or Iron Defense Corviknight with Togetic support. Who knows? On the Edmonton Empoleon side, Cubchoo is already making its season debut with an interesting mix of Pokemon. A lot of offensive heavy hitters here. Venusaur. I don't know why Venusaur is the one I called out first. Galarian, Darmanitan, and Regidrago both hit super hard. Venusaur... If they get Sun set up with like Sunny Day Swoobat or something, then that's a fast threat with those sleep powders. But also the G-Max Vine Lash. Venusaur actually does do a lot of damage in this format. They got the Crocodile, they got the Swoobat. They can do like Simple Beam, Moxie, Earthquake stuff maybe. But I think we're just going to have to jump into the replay and find out. As we see Mew leading with Snorlax against Crocodile and Cubchoo. So eyes peeled for that Trick Room Mew. This really makes me think that's what we're going to see here. Actually, Mew just switches out. Never mind. Crocodile goes straight for Rock Slide. It does 41% to Togetic. That's not too bad. It is super effective, of course, but Togetic is, I'd imagine, pretty bulky with an Eviolite. Snorlax takes it well, though. Oh, and we get to see this immediately. Okay, yeah, so the Raymer King told me in DMs when I asked in the Discord, I wonder what this trade is about. The Raymer King told me in DMs that they'd found out, unfortunately, Bergmite doesn't get Frost Breath in Sword and Shield, and Cubchoo does. Since that was DM'd to me, I figured I shouldn't just say it up front before it actually came up in a set, but turns out it came up in a set immediately. But that's why Cubchoo is on this team, to activate Anger Point on Crocodile with the guaranteed crit from Frost Breath. And that Rock Slide is going to KO that Togetic now, as long as it connects. I still don't know that it does enough to Snorlax, but let's see. Oh! And there's another Yawn. Second set in a row that we see Yawn being thrown around. Yawn is pretty strong in Sword and Shield because, of course, if a Dynamax Pokemon gets Yawned, it has to choose between wasting its Dynamax turns by switching out or wasting them by falling asleep. So it's not surprising to see a lot of Yawn, but I'm a little bit not used to it from playing so much Scarlet and Violet. So that Crocodile got set up, but what's it going to do now? Snorlax protects. Just go straight for another Rock Slide to take out Togetic. Makes sense to me. We see Encore from the Cubchoo. Okay. Trying to lock the Snorlax into Yawn? That's a... Well, it's simultaneously a little bit risky because Yawn is so disruptive, but I mean, I guess it also prevents the Snorlax from doing any damage, and that's kind of nice. Kind of a game of chicken, I guess. If you lock Snorlax into Yawn, like, who switches out of the disruption? Or do they switch out of the disruption before... Do they switch the Snorlax out before the Yawn disrupts you too much? I don't know how to say this. Silvally comes in. He forgot to have a memory installed this week, I guess. It's just normal type Silvally. Goes straight from multi-attack into Crocodile and it KOs. Okay. We see Encore now locking Snorlax into Protect. That's definitely less disruptive to the Empoleons than Yawn. Snorlax switches out to Mew. Venusaur goes for the Gigantamax. Silvally clicks the Thunder Wave and misses Venusaur, and I imagine we're going to see a G-Max Vine Lash here. Sure enough, it goes into Silvally. Does good damage. Gets the residual damage effect. We see Yawn from the Cubchoo now. Everybody's running Yawn this week. We see Yawn from the Cubchoo into Silvally. Silvally doesn't have much longer to survive this Vine Lash anyway. Mew Dynamaxes. I was speculating this Mew was a Trick Room setter, but if it's Dynamaxing itself, it might have a whole other role this week. Let's see. I mean, a max... well, just max guards this turn, but a max... Mind Storm? Is that what it's called? Into Venusaur would probably do a lot. Silvally goes for Explosion, so that's why Mew max guarded. Silvally does not get a KO here. Mew will take a bit of chip, but it will not take the direct Vine Lash damage, nor the Yawn. Cubchoo survives the turn, though, so... Well, thanks to a Focus Sash, so it can click that Yawn again, potentially. We do see max Mind Storm. It takes out Venusaur. Cubchoo does get a Yawn into Mew before being knocked out by Snorlax, but now the Empoleons are down to their last Pokemon in this game. So I think that's a fine trade for the Nothing Burger, as max Mind Storm just wipes out the Galarian Darmanitan. Mew getting those last KOs that it needs before falling asleep, and there's a solid example there of how the Nothing Burger can keep you off balance with this crazy draft, right? I was zeroed in on Mew setting Trick Room to support Snorlax, especially when I saw that they led together, but instead Mew just Dynamaxed and took 2 KOs. And between that and Yawns flying around all over the place and the Crocodile falling asleep. Crazy stuff from this team. Let's see if the Empoleons can figure it out now that they have some information. Let's see what adjustments they make in Game 2. As we get Mew and Silvally this time against Regidrago and Swoobat. Okay. So Swoobat maybe looking to set Tailwind or something. Does it get Tailwind? I think it probably does. Regidrago immediately threatening giant damage. Mew just clicks Skill Swap. Mew just took Dragon's Maw away from... Oh, excuse me. Getting flustered here. Mew just took Dragon's Maw away from Regidrago, so Regidrago's damage will not be as crazy anymore without that Dragon-type boost. That's a crazy tech. We see Thunder Wave into Swoobat. Dragon Energy does still more than half to both of these Pokemon. And Regidrago doesn't take any damage this turn, but we did also get confirmation that both of these are faster than the Regidrago. The Swoobat... Are you serious? They both had Skill Swap, and they both clicked it this turn. And now Swoobat has taken Dragon's Maw away from Mew and given it Klutz, which means Mew's item, whatever it is, will be unusable while Mew has that ability. Of course, Mew can reset that by switching out or by clicking Skill Swap. But now Dragon's Maw is on Swoobat, so if Swoobat gets the chance, it could give it back to Regidrago. That ability has just been swapped around in almost every Pokemon on the field this turn. What is going on here? Mew, Life Dew, heals itself in Silvally. Okay. As the chat takes in what just happened. I think I built Swoobat wrong. I wonder what that's about. Silvally switching out. No damage on Regidrago. Regidrago can throw off another Dragon Energy and do a lot of damage to Mew. Swoobat does not return the Dragon's Maw. Instead, it just clicks Knockoff. I didn't know it got that into Mew. But it doesn't quite KO. Mew had an Iapapa Berry. Which I'm guessing it can't eat anyway if it has Klutz, but it certainly won't get the chance now. Snorlax is here. Mew clicks Psychic into Regidrago, does a third. Dragon Energy takes out Mew, but Snorlax is not taking a ton of damage, but it does take a knockoff from Swoobat, loses a Figgy Berry, and it's below half, so it will be unable to click Belly Drum if it has it now. Dragon Energy does nothing to Togetic. I mean, Regidrago could be choice. Just click Dragon Energy every turn. I would guess Specs then, since it was outsped by these guys. Although if this is Specs Regidrago, then it really is doing a lot. It really is doing significantly less damage without Dragon's Maw, huh? And Swoobat might have wanted to return that at some point. Although I do like the knockoff into Snorlax to deny. Honestly, pretty likely Belly Drum setup considering we see the Figgy Berry. And I guess you click Dragon Energy here even if you're not choice locked, because that way it can't be redirected with Follow Me and you at least get some damage into Snorlax, but this is click Dragon Energy every turn. It's probably Specs, right? Swoobat's fully paralyzed, but survives a Togetic Draining Kiss. Body Slam. Never mind, it's Citrus Berry Regidrago. Okay, so that was not Specs damage. Even so, taking Dragon's Maw away definitely weakened it. Citrus Berry Regidrago, and it has just kept clicking Dragon Energy every turn. Do you think the Raber King would give it only one move? I wouldn't put it past them. Well, let's see. Big John protects. Oh, never mind. It is Rest. Wait, what if it's 3-move Regidrago? Rest, Sleep Talk, Dragon Energy. That's a crazy tech that I could see the Raymer King using. But yeah, it gets back to full, so that Dragon Energy will get powered up again. Swoobat uses Reflect. Togetic gives Snorlax some healing with Life Dew. Regidrago, of course, does have to get through these 2 turns of sleep. It does click Sleep Talk, but it rolls Rest. We said knock off, remove the Eviolite. Nope, Aguav Berry. That explains why Togetic was taking so much damage from the Rock Slides. It's an Aguav Berry Togetic. I don't know that I get that when you have Life Dew to heal yourself. Feels like Eviolite is more valuable, but a lot of recovery berries all over this team this week. Maybe they just spammed mono recovery berries as a bit. Who knows? Swoobat has still never returned to Dragon's Maw to Regidrago, by the way. But Togetic's item is removed. Regidrago flubs a Sleep Talk. What is the Snorlax doing? I'm losing it here. Okay, Swoobat's knocked out. Dragon's Maw now cannot be returned. Of course, Regidrago, if it ever switches out and back in, will get Dragon's Maw back, but there's no skill swap return. How many berries do you have? I think they might have only berries this week. Anyway, here's Donkey Kong. Helping Hand, but Snorlax is taken out by Brick Break, so it won't get to execute that attack. This is an opening for Regidrago to go for another Sleep Talk. If it has a 4th move that can damage Togetic, that could be very helpful here, but I don't know if it does. Dragon Pulse. Okay, so it does have 4 moves, but it can't damage Togetic. We see Parting Shot immediately from Silvally into Donkey Kong, but still drops to a Brick Break. And Regidrago can't damage Togetic, but Darmanitan should be able to finish it off from here. And their last Pokemon is Venusaur, which also should be able to... Oh, it's probably Guerrilla Tactics, Darmanitan, so it's locked into Brick Break. But if you just switch that out and back in, then you can click Icicle Crash. But I guess they also can... Max Ooze even. Okay, Togetic Dynamaxes. I guess why not when it's the only Pokemon left. Raymer King says, I'm sorry, but I want the Darmanitan kill, so trying to pad the stats a little bit there. So Venusaur's just going to chip a little bit at this Togetic. We'll just let it play out. I don't think I need to pause this one anymore. Not much damage either way. Alfonso solos, maybe. That Max Starfall did decent damage to Donkey Kong, but Donkey Kong Dynamaxes and a Max Hailstorm takes out Alfonso. And the Raymer King has taken the win. The Galarian Darmanitan closing this one out. Is there anything else to say about this game? Regidrago was significantly nerfed without Dragon's Maw, but those, let them click Dragon Energy 4 times and it still does enough damage that it wears down some of the threats. And then I guess really Darmanitan was able to come in and take some quick KOs to close this one out after all the Regidrago shenanigans in the early game. I did not expect to see both sides click Skill Swap turn 1. So who on earth knows what's happening next, but we are getting a game 3 in this set. Let's go. Mew and Ditto. The Ditto lead again. It's going to turn into Swoobat this time. They probably wanted Regidrago. So the Raymer King does the same lead, but swaps the order. So I'm guessing the Nothing Burger was trying to turn Ditto into Regidrago there, but because the Empoleons flipped the order, the Nothing Burger gets Swoobat instead. So that's a smart adjustment by the Empoleons there to not let the Ditto get away with it again. It was very cool to see the Arctozolt transformation turn 1, but they don't pull it off, or turn 1 in week 1, but they don't pull it off this time. Turn 0 in week 1. Mew goes straight for a Psychic into Regidrago and gets his berry knocked off. We see the skill swap again, taking away the Dragon's Maw. I guess a majority of Pokemon on the field have skill swap right now. Dragon Energy at 63%. HP does not take any KOs here. We see a Life Dew. The Nothing Burger playing it a little slowly, getting a knockoff, big knockoff for 50% into Swoobat. Swoobat used skill swap with its partner, but they both have Klutz, right? This Swoobat gave Klutz to Regidrago, so then... Wait. Why is the Swoobat running Klutz? We saw its item was a mental herb. It probably wants to make actual use of that. That's probably what they meant when they said that they built the Swoobat wrong. Klutz was probably not the intended ability. Okay, there we go. I got there. But this is just trading Klutzes back and forth. I don't know if that skill swap was a misclick or what, but... Dragon Pulse into Mew. Doesn't KO. We get... this is too confusing. I agree. We get Life Orb, bits of chip damage, knockoff back and forth. The Ditto is holding a Quick Claw, so it's not all berries after all. But that is a common Ditto item. Most common Ditto item is Choice Scarf, because again, you have the same speed stat as whatever you're transformed into, and then with the Choice Scarf, you know that you're faster unless they have a Scarf as well. But Quick Claw is a common one, because at least you get to go before your target sometimes. Snorlax switches in. Swoobat says Ditto sets Reflect. Snorlax's Figgy Berry is out of here. Regidrago rests. We pretty well know what these teams do at this point. They're poking away at each other bit by bit. There's a Reflect on the other side. That'll slow down that body slam and multi-attack into Regidrago. Regidrago takes a parting shot. Mew's back, but it drops to a knockoff, so no more life dew on the Nothing Burger side. Regidrago burning through those sleep turns, but it is at -1 special attack. Both Swoobat are out of here. Well, the Ditto switched out, but I can't turn into Swoobat anymore because Swoobat fainted. Sylvally is here. Venusaur is here. Regidrago switches out to Darmanitan. Venusaur Gigantamaxes and gets paralyzed. And gets fully paralyzed. Uh-oh. Darmanitan takes a Body Slam reasonably well, but Snorlax Dynamaxes. It is not Gigantamax Snorlax this week. That does surprise me, especially when it's running a Figgy Berry, because with Gmax Replenish you can get your berries back, but maybe they value the speed drop from Max Strike more this week. It does seem like some of these Pokemon, Sylvally and Mew, are deliberately fast. Also, I guess Max Strike is good when you're running Ditto, because that's another way without a Choice Scarf to make your Ditto faster than its targets. I thought this whole time that this was going to be Gmax Snorlax, but my best guess as to why it isn't is that there's something they value about the Max Strike. Maybe it's the Ditto stuff. Still takes a lot from a Brick Break. Another one will KO, but will there be another one? No. Multi-attack takes out Darmanitan. Venusaur is fully paralyzed twice. That's now, again, that's now 2 of its 3 Dynamax turns. Unfortunate, especially since it takes that Max Strike pretty well with the Reflect. Regidrago comes in. It will never be able to switch out again, but Sylvally just goes for multi-attack. I mean, it does a lot of damage. That's going to weaken that Dragon Energy very nicely. Regidrago does wake up here. Dragon Energy being weakened makes a real difference as Snorlax and Sylvally both take that. Snorlax Max Strikes Venusaur. Venusaur finally gets to move. Gmax Vine Lash doesn't quite KO Snorlax, but the residual damage does, so really Gmax Vine Lash does KO Snorlax. Ditto will come in and transform into Regidrago at -1 speed. Venusaur's Dynamax is over. It only got to use 1 turn. Pretty unlucky. Multi-attack takes out the real Regidrago. Sylvally being comfortably the fastest Pokemon, especially with those speed drops. And live by the Dragon Energy, die by the Dragon Energy, as Ditto transformed into Regidrago successfully this time. Tried to do it turn 0. Finally does it for real now in the late game. And gets that last KO into Venusaur. I don't even know what to say about this game. There was all kinds of weird stuff going on back and forth. The skill swap, Klutz swap was really something. Sylvally was putting in a lot of work with those multi-attacks. That did a lot of damage throughout the set. But, of course, the other big thing here is Venusaur being fully paralyzed on its first 2 Dynamax turns and only getting to execute 1 Gmax Fine Lash. In any case, the Nothing Burger take the win. But the Empoleons definitely had my head spinning at some points in this set. And that surely counts for something as well. We jump now to the Windsor Whiscash with new Pokemon circuitry taking on the Azurbe Chatots. The Chatots have brought their other Sand Rush Pokemon this time. The Dracovish is here, able to have its speed boosted by Tyranitar and hit hard with those boosted by going first Vicious Wrens. We got an otherwise well-balanced Fairy Dragon Steel Core of Genesect, Clefable, and Komodo. Clefable is interesting because it can create openings for Komodo to set up. Sarina is here to stop priority, probably protecting the Dracovish. And maybe like the Tyranitar from Barrascu to Aquajet or something, I don't know. On the Whiscash side, I could see the Blaziken being a threat for sure if it gets some speed boosts. It obviously kind of cooks the Genesect and beats up the Tyranitar. It can run coverage for some of the others, like a Blaziken Max Airstream off of Brave Bird should do a lot to Komodo. Obviously, it only gets so many moves, and it probably wants to have Protect, so But also you can use Max Flare to set up the Sun, and that should do a lot to Clefable as well. So Blaziken is actually very offensively strong into this team, especially if you're willing to Dynamax it, with its main issue being Dracovish, but get enough speed boosts and you can deal with that. And more importantly, they also have the Gastrodon to check the Dracovish, right? Gastrodon can redirect a Vicious Rend and nullify its damage with Storm Drain. So the duo of Gastrodon and Blaziken looks very strong into this team, but they also have Sableye for support. They have Moltres, they have Fast Attacker, Barraskewda, and we'll see if Circuitry does anything in its debut, but for sure, the Pokemon that I have my eye on here, I guess Sarina is also helpful for creating openings for Dracovish, right? With Sarina around, the Gastrodon can't get comfy. Clefable can help with that as well. There are a few different modes the Chatots can throw at them. This is Dracovish's season debut, so I'm definitely down to see it put in work. But yeah, on the Whiscash side, I'm most interested in the Blaziken and the Gastrodon here, because I think that duo, if they're positioned right, can actually be very hard for the Chatots to deal with. Let's see. Clefable leads with Tyranitar against Blaziken and Circuitry. Okay. Sandstorm is up. Blaziken protects. Blaziken, of course, will take sand damage unless it's carrying safety goggles. So if it has a Focus Sash, which it might not, but if it does, it's throwing that away for this. Clefable goes for Follow Me, but Circuitry goes for Dazzling Gleam. Does about a quarter to both of them. Not a ton of damage. Tyranitar is weak to the Fairy-type damage, but of course it's non-stab. It's not a super strong attack. It's spread. Tyranitar gets the Rock-type special defense boost in Sandstorm, and it could be carrying an Assault Vest. That's a pretty common Tyranitar item, especially since we don't see a weakness policy, which is probably the most common Tyranitar item in this generation. High horsepower to protect, and that's the turn. Blaziken gets a speed boost. And then goes for Blaze Kick into Clefable. Interesting choice of physical fire-type attack there. Of course, it doesn't have the recoil of Flare Blitz, but it also doesn't have the power of Flare Blitz. Or the accuracy. Blaze Kick can miss. Don't remember exactly how accurate it is, but it doesn't quite get the KO into Clefable there. We'll see what Circuitry follows up with. It's Calm Mind. Now, if this is Magic Guard Clefable, it also doesn't take sand damage, so we actually should have seen that already. Yeah, it is. So Blaziken missing that KO is not ideal. If Circuitry had followed up with Dazzling Gleam, it'd be like, okay. You get Tyranitar down to about 50% to Clefable out of here. The Calm Mind means that Clefable gets to survive one more turn and maybe click a Follow Me or something again. Tyranitar goes high horsepower, knocks out Blaziken. Yeah, and Blaziken, remember, I'd identified as one of the as maybe the biggest offensive threat into this team, depending on how it's trained, what its set is. I don't just mean EVs, I mean moves and stuff as well. Unfortunately, Blaze Kick just not quite powerful enough in this position for what they were trying to do. We got Barraskewda in now. I don't know why Barraskewda's model is enormous. Was it like that when I had it on my team in Season 5? I don't remember. But Barraskewda comes in certainly looking like a threat. Circuitry Dynamaxes, managing just barely to be bigger than Barraskewda again. As Clefable goes for Follow Me, but Barraskewda knocks out with a Flip Turn. That means Circuitry's max move will go into Tyranitar. We see Sableye as the last Pokemon for the Whiscash. Once again, though, the Whiscash narrowly missing a KO, as Max Lightning does not... +1 Max Lightning does not pick up what I'm thinking is an Assault Vest Tyranitar. But Circuitry survives the high horsepower back. It does take a lot of damage, but it will get to attack again. Sarina is here. So there's no fake out play to be made with Sableye. Actually, there's no priority play to be made with Sableye. You can't even Will-O-Wisp the... Well, you can't Will-O-Wisp the Tyranitar with Prankster anyway, because it's a Dark type. Alright, well, the Sarina is stopping any priority shenanigans it might have, and it Dynamaxes. Should be a strong position for Sarina to Dynamax. Circuitry is pretty weakened at this point, and Sarina should be able to take a Max Lightning, thanks to that Grass typing, and then, of course, there's a Giant Threat into Barraskewda, and Sableye just doesn't have a lot it can do back. Probably. Could be like Foul Play Sableye. Sableye protects this turn. Max Lightning does take out Tyranitar, but Sarina now is free to attack. It goes for Max Starfall into Sableye, so Circuitry will get to throw off one more Max move. Probably. I guess not if Dracovish or is the last Pokemon, because I'm sure it drops to a Vicious Rend now. If Genesect is the last Pokemon, that might outspeed Circuitry, but I don't know if it KOs. It is Dracovish, though. Sableye goes for a Helping Hand, but yeah, that last Max move will not be executed. Sableye drops to another Max Starfall, and the Whiscash are left with just Barraskewda, with a very appropriate nickname considering this model, which only gets 2 Scale Shot hits into Dracovish. The Sandstorm had ended there, so Dracovish didn't have the Sand Rush boost, but Barraskewda is also super fast. That Scale Shot could have done a lot of damage. It was only doing, what, about 14% per hit, so it's not enough even if it gets all 5, but only getting 2 can't feel good. And Barraskewda drops to 2 attacks. Barraskewda is not very bulky. Good for it taking a Vicious Rend, even though it's resisted, but yeah, it was never taking a max overgrowth. And so that was a pretty smooth one for the Chatots. The Whiscash had a couple of key moments where their Pokemon just didn't quite get the KOs that they needed, but let's see if they can find some adjustments to overcome falling just short on power in Game 2. Maybe we see like a max Starfall into Tyranitar this time, although I think they want the Electric Terrain for the damage boost for Circuitry. Tyranitar or Dracovish just straight up leading this time against Blaziken and Circuitry again. Same lead from the Whiscash. Circuitry switches out immediately to Gastrodon to shut down that Vicious Rend. Blaziken takes a fair bit from a Rock Slide. Does not protect turn 1, but we don't get to see what it went for instead as it does get flinched. Oh, it was Dracovish Rock Slide. That makes sense. Of course, Dracovish is faster than Tyranitar. So they didn't fall for the Gastrodon bait. No Vicious Rend, but Tyranitar uses its move to high horsepower in a Gastrodon, probably trying to get rid of that so they can click Vicious Rend more freely, or maybe they thought that the Blaziken would switch out and that high horsepower would go into Circuitry. That would make sense. Don't know what Blaziken went for, but it gets a speed boost here. It gets through the turn, 59%. Sarina switches in, and Clefable. Interesting. Complete repositioning there from the Chatots. I do kind of understand it, because you probably want Dracovish for the late game, and you want to be able to set the sand back up if Blaziken clicks Max Flare, but it does mean that Blaziken gets a somewhat easier position against these two Pokemon this turn. That said, this turn Close Combat will go... Whoa! Close Combat will go into Clefable, but it actually does a lot of damage. It's Life Orb Blaziken, though, so... it has to put in a lot of work before it faints, and it probably will not get a lot of time to do that. Let's see what they can come up with. Moltres is now switching in for Gastrodon. Sarina Dynamaxes again. Fable goes for Follow Me. This time it does drop to a Blaze Kick. Moltres takes that max overgrowth. Gastrodon survives to deal with the Dracovish in the back. Good switches here from the Whiscash. Dracovish is here. Blaziken just going for that Blaze Kick into Sarina. It crits and knocks out the Dynamax threat. And then both Pokemon drop to Rock Slide, but Dracovish is now never clicking Vicious Rend. It's just a matter of overcoming... Well, it's mainly a matter of overcoming the Tyranitar. This is where I wouldn't be surprised to see Max Starfall do somewhat more damage than that Dazzling Gleam did in Game 1. Circuitry Dynamaxes. It is Max Lightning into Tyranitar. It does half. That's reasonable. And Circuitry, thanks to the Dynamax, does take a high horsepower. Gastrodon fires off a Scald. It gets the burn. I'm not sure that really matters here. The Sandstorm is over, by the way. Tyranitar had to come back in late in the Sandstorm, wasn't able to set it back up. Max Lightning takes out the Tyranitar. Yeah, the Scald burn didn't matter. Tyranitar was always fainting to that. And Dracovish Rock Slide is just not strong enough into a Dynamax threat and a resistance. They do click Yawn in Electric Terrain, I think forgetting that Electric Terrain blocks Sleep. But I don't think Dracovish is going to take a Max Lightning on the next turn, or a Max Starfall. Whichever one. There it goes. And that's the power of Circuitry right there. That is that trade paying off already, as Toxicroak was not going to be, bailing out its team like that. I shouldn't say bailing out his team. The Whiscash positioned this pretty well. They switched around and had answers to all the threats that the Chatots threw at them. It was a pretty solid game all around. But Toxicroak is not delivering the kind of late game offense that we saw from Circuitry here. So yeah, that trade paying off already. We go to Game 3. Sarina now leading with Komo-o against Blaziken and Circuitry. Same leads for the Whiscash in all 3 games. This time, however, Circuitry, as Absols said, terrestrializes. Dynamax is turn 1, probably looking for a Max Starfall to just take out Komo-o before it can set up or anything. Sarina also Dynamax is turn 1. Komo-o protects. Survives the Max Starfall, although that still does a ton of damage through the Protect. It's Misty Seed Sarina, though. It's here to... Okay, what Misty Seed is interesting. Because obviously it only activates in Misty Terrain. Were they anticipating... I guess you could anticipate the circuitry throwing around fairy-type attacks and wanting to Dynamax, but... They must have had some other way to activate that, you would think. Maybe Clefable knows the move Misty Terrain, or maybe they anticipate that they'll Dynamax Clefable some games. It's not a crazy Dynamax target. I mean, Dracovish doesn't want to Dynamax most of the time because you don't get the buff of Vicious Rend then, and in fact you turn off your own sand. But maybe they just anticipated that they would face Dazzling Gleam circuitry that would want to Dynamax. It makes a lot of sense to this matchup. I don't know what went into the building decision there. In any case, Misty Seed Serena will take a Blaze Kick. It does survive. No crit this time. Takes a lot of damage, though. And so I think the Whiscash were looking for 2 quick KOs this turn. They don't get either one, but they do a lot of damage. We'll see how the Chatots adjust. Max Airstream Serena takes out Blaziken. Huge. That speed control could matter a lot, especially with Barrascuda coming in. Yeah, Kamo now fastest on the field. Close combat crits circuitry, but doesn't KO. What does Serena go for? It gets knocked out by a Poison Jab. Yeah, Barrascuda's base speed, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like 146, I think. It's really high. Maybe that is exactly. I had Barrascuda in Season 5. So, I thought that Max Airstream might have blown the whole game wide open for the Chatots. But then Barrascuda still outsped Serena. I had Barrascuda in Season 5 in a Scarlet and Violet Reg G, I think, style format. And honestly, it didn't even do that much. That was the season where I got to the final and finished as the runner-up. Barrascuda didn't even do that much work in the actual battles, but I loved having it in the team builder because it made speed decisions so much harder for my opponent. Like, just having the threat of Barrascuda outspeeding all their stuff definitely warped some of their decisions and made some of mine easier in terms of speed investment and whatnot. But this was not just a threat. Barrascuda outsped that +1 Serena and took it out. And we'll see if it's Tyranitar and Dracovish again in the back. They have brought that duo to every game so far. If it's Tyranitar and Dracovish, and if there's Gastrodon in the back for the Whiscash, looks pretty good for the Whiscash. Let's see. Dracovish, Tyranitar. Of course, you can't freely click Vicious Rend when this is lurking, but Dracovish instead clicks Stomping Tantrum. It's Gastrodon and Barrascuda against Dracovish and Tyranitar. Dracovish, I think, is probably choice locked, but there haven't been many positions where it would want to change what move it's clicking anyway. But Stomping Tantrum does 60% to Barrascuda. This Barrascuda is taking hits pretty well throughout the set compared to what I normally expect of it. It does, once again, only land 2 Scale Shot hits, though, and then it drops to a Tyranitar Crunch. Scald into Tyranitar. No burn this time. And I think Gastrodon will just not have enough damage to win this. This guy's Scald crit. But this is where you could use the burn more than in that earlier game. Yeah, the next Stomping Tantrum should do it. There's the burn. Too late. I got one too early and one too late. Gastrodon shutting down the Vicious Rend. I thought it gave them a real chance in this endgame, but it just doesn't do enough damage. And so Dracovish and Tyranitar, this powerhouse duo that are going to be on a lot of coaches' radars over the course of the season, do overwhelm the Windsor Whiscash and close this game out. That said, the circuitry put in a lot of work, and I think the Whiscash coach is fairly new to VGC-style Pokemon and Pokemon Draft Leagues. Feel free to let me know if I'm mistaken about that, but I feel like I watched your play improve in real time over the course of this set, so solid back and forth, well fought by both sides. Definitely keep an eye on the Whiscash over the rest of the season. They may be 0-2 right now, but they're definitely cooking something here, and I could see it still being a tough matchup for a number of coaches the rest of the way. I'm glad I already played them in Week 1. Grounded Punching Bags versus Dreamyard Darkrais. The Punching Bags have brought the Wobbuffet that we saw throw hands with Max Knuckle last week. Let's see if we see something like that again. And once again, it is Sand Fossil shenanigans here with the Hippowdon and the Dracozolt. Hopefully looking to throw off those boosted Bolt Beaks this time. I can see Gardevoir running Telepathy to survive Hippowdon Earthquake. Otherwise, I think it just nicely complements Dracozolt as a Fairy-type special attacker. They have the Credilli, I assume, with Storm Drain to help deal with Dreadnought and Politoed. Dreadnought might not be able to so easily click G-Max Stone Surge into this team. And the Azumarill, the Azumarill is strong, especially if they can get a Belly Drum and maybe even take advantage of the opponent's rain with boosted Aqua Jet or Max Geyser or something. Or it could be Choice Band Azumarill to take advantage of the opponent's rain. That works too. We do see the rain mode from the Darkrais, so this is a weather war this week. Again, Bleak Wind Storm does not exist in Sword and Shield, but that Tornadus can throw off accuracy boosted Hurricane. Dreadnought gets Swift Swim, Dreadnought gets strong water type attacks boosted by the rain, and they can disrupt the opponent's sand and deal with the Dracozolt that way. That said, the Dracozolt is still a giant threat. I mean, Bolt Beak, it hits harder if it goes first, but even if it doesn't go first, it's still super effective into all three of those Pokemon. The Zapdos, Azelf, and Zoroark, I have no idea what those Pokemon are for in this matchup. I don't remember whether Zapdos gets Hurricane in this generation. I think there are generations where it doesn't. But in Gen 8, I think it probably does. But it can also threaten the Azumarill, at least, offensively. Yeah, Azelf, Zoroark, I have no idea. Who knows what's going to happen? You never know what you'll see when there's a Zoroark on the field. Let's just jump in. Or a Zoroark at preview, even. Azelf and Politoed leading here. Against Gardevoir and Wobbuffet. The Wobbuffet is looking to claim some KOs here, no doubt. After Max Knuckle came up a little bit short last time. We saw, Ally Switch and Mirror Coat stuff with the Wobbuffet as well, trying to trick the opponent into attacking it last week. Who knows this time? Azelf Dynamaxes. Politoed goes for Sludge Bomb. That is not Politoed, that is Zoroark. I don't think Politoed learns Sludge Bomb, but I know Zoroark does. And it is an effective trick, as that almost knocks out the Gardevoir in one shot, turn one, when the punching bags probably did not see that coming. Actually, Politoed didn't set up the rain, of course it was Zoroark. But you know what? I missed that for a second too, so who knows whether the punching bags caught on. I should remember though, that's a classic that's a +1 lesson. If you're going to run Zoroark, you need abilities that are going to fool the opponent. I really should have noticed immediately, oh, that Politoed didn't set up the rain. In any case, that's definitely Zoroark. We see Max Starfall from Azelf taking a KO on the Gardevoir. Wobbuffet will go for Encore, I assume into Azelf. That's why it failed. Encore does not work into Dynamaxed Pokemon. It would have worked into Zoroark because Wobbuffet doesn't have Prankster, so Zoroark is not immune to its Encore. But yeah, Darkrais, no need to target the Wobbuffet, but they can just knock out the Gardevoir instead, and Wobbuffet doesn't have a whole lot that it can do from there. Dracozolt is here now. It actually switches out to Azumarill, so they didn't bring the Hippowdon to this game. Azumarill just gets smacked by a super effective Sludge Bomb from Zoroark now, though. That's 3/4 of its health. We don't see a Berry on Azumarill, so it could be something like a Choice Band set. But it drops to Max Starfall. Wobbuffet clicks Mirror Coat, but nobody's attacking Wobbuffet right now. And now here's Dracozolt. Zoroark goes straight for a Sludge Bomb again. Perhaps this is Spec Zoroark or something like that. Reckless Trico did share their paste in the Discord, but I didn't look at it. Maybe I'll do that later. Or maybe I'll do that after this. Before I jump to the next set, if I remember. We'll see. But yeah, that Sludge Bomb does a lot to that Dracozolt as well. And Max Starfall will finish it off. The Darkrais really just had to click 3 moves. Or had to click the same moves 3 times to get through 3 of these Pokemon. And yeah, Wobbuffet is not pulling this one back. So a quick forfeit there from the punching bags. You are technically not supposed to forfeit. You are technically supposed to play it out and see what Pokemon will get the KO into Wobbuffet for stat counting purposes. Of course, Zoroark is immune to Mirror Coat because it's a Dark type, and Mirror Coat is a Psychic type attack. It is not a status move, it's a special attack. So Zoroark always wins the game from here no matter what. I can understand that forfeit. Game 2, let's see what adjustments the punching bags find. Will we see the Wobbuffet again? We see Azelf and Dreadnought this time. There are no abilities that will immediately give away whether one of them is Zoroark. We see Wobbuffet leading once again, this time with Azumarill. I'm so excited now whenever I see this Wobbuffet. Dreadnought Gigantamaxes. I actually don't know how Dynamax interacts with Illusion. Like, I don't know whether Zoroark will reveal itself on the spot if it Dynamaxes. I think it does if it Terrestrializes in Scarlet and Violet. I certainly don't know whether Zoroark can pretend to be G-Max Dreadnought, so I'm inclined to say that this is the real deal. Ah yeah, Zoroark is in the Azelf slot this time. Azelf definitely doesn't get Sludge Bomb, but we know Zoroark does. Sludge Bomb, once again, does a lot of damage to Azumarill. But the G-Max Stone Surge goes into Wobbuffet. They are attacking the Wobbuffet this time, so it will get a chance if it clicked counter to do damage back. G-Max Stone Surge, of course, water-type attack, but it sets up Stealth Rock. So now there's that on the punching bag side. Wobbuffet clicked counter. It's not quite enough to KO the Dreadnought, but that did a lot of damage. Also, let's not ignore that in the Wobbuffet hype that Azumarill just clicked Perish Song, so they have a Perish Trap set up with Wobbuffet right now. To be honest, I'm not sure I remembered they could do that, even though I've run Perish Song Azumarill in this league, I'm pretty sure. But there we go. There's something Wobbuffet could do, right? Perish Trap. It took a lot of damage from that Stone Surge, though, so I'm not sure they'll be able to actually execute the trap. But hey, another Stone Surge probably doesn't KO. Hippowdon switches in. That can take a Sludge Bomb nicely, and it does. Max Strike. I don't know why Dreadnought went for Max Strike, but it doesn't KO Hippowdon. And they're not going for the KO into Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet would take a Stone Surge, but I don't think it would have taken a Sludge Bomb and a Stone Surge. And I don't think Wobbuffet can learn Protect, so... Wobbuffet is very limited in what moves it can get. I don't think it gets Protect, so I'm not sure why they didn't double the Wobbuffet there, but maybe I'll find out. In any case, the Perish counter is ticking down. Hippowdon protects. They do double the Wobbuffet this time, but it's with Max Strike again. Maybe they're trying... Oh, you know what? They're probably not clicking Stone Surge because they want to cover for Credility switching in. That's probably what it is. If Credility switches in with Storm Drain, then G-Max Stone Surge does no damage to anything. So this is their best bet to KO Wobbuffet. But it does come up just short. Oh, and maybe then they were trying to catch Credility switching in, although Max Strike would be resisted. I don't know, but this is not enough to KO Wobbuffet after all. The Mirror Coat does go into Zoroark, but Zoroark is immune because it's a Dark type. But the Perish Trap was successful after all. I guess just the threat of Credility in the back was enough to give Wobbuffet the turns that it needed. Even though, again, I'm pretty sure Wobbuffet doesn't learn Protect, so it's a little bit odd as a Perish Trapper. But it does work this turn. Wobbuffet will be KO'd, but both of these Pokemon will perish at the end of the turn. Dreadnought just goes for Liquidation this time, so they do take 2 KOs with them. It is going to be a 2v2 now, thanks to the Perish Song. We see Politoed, the real deal, and Azelf, the real deal. There's that Drizzle. We got Azumarill and Dracozolt on the other side. Aqua Jet only does 20% to Azelf. Wow. Play Rough misses Dracozolt. Bolt Beak KOs Azelf, and Politoed suddenly is on its own. If that Play Rough connects with Dracozolt, I don't know how much damage it does. Azelf has a pretty good attack stat. I'm getting a phone call. Hang on a moment. Okay, not only was that a scam call, and not only was it in broken English, but it also had music so loud that I could barely make out any of the broken English, so I don't even know what they were trying to say. I've been dealing with a small insurance thing lately, so I thought the call might be about that. Yeah, I don't know if that Play Rough KOs Dracozolt, but Azelf is a strong Pokemon. Take out the Dracozolt there, and that might be GG. But instead, Dracozolt takes out both opponents. Alright, we're just going to go to Game 3. Will we see the Wobbuffet in this one? At this point, I think we probably will, but who knows. Dreadnought and Azelf against Hippowdon and Dracozolt. This does look like the same lead as last game, but who knows? And on the from the Darkrais, and on the punching bag side, they've gone straight to the sand mode. That means Politoed can switch in, of course, and turn their weather off. Get Swift Swim going instead of Sand Rush. But actually, no Swift Swim because Dreadnought switches out for Politoed. Drizzle is set up. Hippowdon switches out to Credility, though. So if they'd gone for G-Max Stone Surge or Liquidation there, that would not have worked. Azelf Dynamaxes. It goes for Max Starfall, and it takes out the Dracozolt. So no Bolt Beak threat this game. Hippowdon is back, the Sand is back, but Dracozolt is not here to take advantage. And Politoed can just switch right out to Dreadnought. Azelf goes for Max Strike and a Credility. It is a little bit of damage. We see his Life Orb Azelf. It gets paralyzed by a Body Slam by Hippowdon. Pretty unfortunate for it. And we can reasonably infer that it's physical Azelf because we saw the Play Rough. So yeah, that Mirror Coat from Credility not doing anything there. Dreadnought knows U-turn, so I don't think that's Dreadnought. I think that's Zoroark. I'm pretty sure Dreadnought doesn't learn U-turn. Zoroark showing up in all 3 games, and definitely being a very tricky illusion Pokemon this time. There's some good chip in a Cradily. We see a Rocky Helmet. We see Politoed come back in. We see Max Mindstorm do a lot of damage to Hippowdon. Maybe it's mixed Azoth, I don't know. Azoth just has a high attack stat. Doesn't even have to be mixed, I don't think. I don't, heck if I know. Azoth physical Max Mindstorm into Hippowdon calcs. Sand Tomb into Azoth, but it has Levitate, so that does nothing. Energy Ball into Politoed does something. Maybe less than they like. We see a Weather Ball into Cradily, but that is a Water-type Weather Ball, so it will activate the Storm Drain and give Cradily a boost. Not sure if they forgot about Storm Drain or some part of that interaction, who knows, but it is in fact Zen Headbutt Azoth. We see confirmation of the physical Psychic-type attack now. That takes out the Cradily. The only problem with the Weather Ball is that it didn't do any damage to anything, but I mean, Hippowdon's not looking like much of a threat anyway. Sure, it uses Slack Off to heal itself, but it now cannot switch out, get Sand back up, and it's not much of an offensive threat. We see Gardevoir come in, outspeed everything, click Dazzling Gleam, KO Azoth, Politoed surviving, nice and bulky with that Citrus Berry, Muddy Water, gets the Accuracy Drop into Hippowdon, not a ton of damage in anything, but Accuracy Drop is nice. Body Slam back is not doing much damage, Sand Tomb won't either. Dreadnought is here, I think it's the real Dreadnought. Well, never mind, it's not the real Dreadnought. The real Dreadnought switches in next to it. We got double Dreadnought on the field. Always fun in these Zoroark games when you see the same Pokemon on the field twice. The one that came in first is the Zoroark. Sludge Bomb will take out the Gardevoir. We know that roll from earlier. Body Slam into the real Dreadnought. Not very effective. And Liquidation will take out the Hippowdon. And the Dreamyard Darkrais take this set with their 2 Dreadnought on the field next to each other. Definitely a nice little image to end on for this one. And who knows, maybe Wobbuffet Perish Trap was the key, because that is the game that the Punching Bags won, but we'll have to see what they come up with that Wobbuffet in future weeks. For now, we jump to the Alaskan Absols taking on the East Coast Espurr. The Espurr have brought the Colossal. It is here this week after not making its debut last week. And we've got the Firewater Grass Core with Colossal, Primarina, and Rillaboom. Multiple options for speed control. They could side Aqua Jet into Colossal. They could Sparkling Aria, someone pointed out to me at some point, which hits all other Pokemon on the field except the user. They could do the Swamp Stuff with their 2 starters of the appropriate types. Or there's Tailwind Drifblim, which of course, like I mentioned earlier, could be running a Grassy Seed with that Grassy Surge Rillaboom. The Alola and Marowak is an interesting touch here, though. The opponent has a lot of Intimidate, potential Intimidate users, all of which are faster than Marowak, and there's no clear Amulet in this game. That's a Scarlet and Violet invention. Marowak wants to run Thick Club anyway. The Marowak only item that doubles its attack stat. But also, if you're running Marowak, you're probably thinking about Trick Room, so it could be Trick Room Drifblim this week. Or maybe Espurr gets Trick Room. I don't know whether it does. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with Espurr's move pool. But who knows? The mascot is here. We'll see if it gets into the game. And otherwise, just a well-rounded mix of threats against, on the Alaskan Absols side, Triple Dragon. Triple Dragon. They have the Salamence and the Dragalge and the Goodra. The Dragon typing is not necessarily, I was gonna say not necessarily that important, not necessarily even beneficial in this game, because Primarina becomes that much more threatening. But they do at least have tanky Pokemon that can maybe weather G-Max, Volcalith, Onslaught. But I must wonder, looking at the Pokemon on the other side, whether we'll be seeing Dynamax Primarina here instead. They do have a lot of threats into Marowak and Rillaboom, as long as they're faster. But again, there could be Trick Room somewhere on this team. I don't know what the Magnezone is here for. And a lot of possible Intimidates, but Primarina and Colossal don't care about that, but some of their teammates do. Rillaboom and Marowak look pretty hard-pressed to deal with some of this team. Especially with the Gyarados and the Salamence checking Marowak and Rillaboom so hard. But Colossal and Primarina, we'll see what the Absols have prepared for them. Primarina leads with Colossal against Salamence and Gyarados. I don't think that Intimidate is going to matter. Double Intimidate, they do both have it. Salamence go straight for the Dynamax. Colossal goes straight for the Gigantamax. Here we go. It is Aqua Jet Primarina, doing only 8% to partner Colossal. We get the Steam Engine, we get the Weakness Policy. Classic Colossal gameplay. Gyarados outspeeds and goes for Earthquake, but it does not do enough damage as G-Max Volcalith wipes out Gyarados, sets up the residual damage. Salamence throws back a Max Airstream, and we are off to the races here. Both teams getting the setup they want in exchange for one of their Pokemon being knocked out. Marowak shows up now for the Espurrs. It does get Lightning Rod, so it actually could stop an electric attack from Magnezone. And it's obviously an offensive threat into Magnezone, but I am a little bit surprised to see it in the Colossal mode here. We'll see what it does. Magnezone actually switches out to Goodra. We get Max Wormwind into Colossal, does some decent damage. But G-Max Volcalith wipes out the Salamence, and that's the problem with bringing flying types against Colossal, I guess. If the Gyarados had ever gotten like a big water type attack into Colossal, I guess that might have done more than the Earthquake did. Maybe you need like Max Geyser, I don't know. But anyway, we see Poltergeist from the Marowak. There's a lot to the Goodra. That G-Max Volcalith damage is adding up quickly as well. Magnezone now has to try to do something. G-Max Volcalith takes out Goodra. Flare Blitz from Marowak knocks Magnezone down to Sturdy. And all Magnezone has going forward is Electro Web, which is not enough to take a KO here. It'll drop to the Volcalith damage. And in just 3 turns, Gigantamax Colossal took all 4 KOs for the East Coast Espurr in this game. That is a broken Pokemon right there. And there's a reason they took it in round 1 when they saw it in the B tier. We've been waiting for this thing to show up and have a game exactly like this. It didn't play at all in week 1, but it is wasting no time now in week 2. Of course, now we go to game 2, and we'll see whether the Gyarados plays differently or there's something else to beat it. Maybe the Goodra can beat it. We didn't really get any info on the Goodra set. I think we saw that it had a Life Orb, right? Because that was the item that Poltergeist showed. Well, let's see. Colossal once again with Primarina. This time against Goodra and Gyarados, so the 2 Pokemon that I think might plausibly be able to check this Colossal if they're going to slip top it at all. Let's see what they've got. Gyarados just switches out, actually, to Salamence. Goodra Dynamaxes. Okay, Dynamax Goodra could be a threat. Colossal protecting. Taking a Max Geyser. It gets crit. It narrowly survives the Max Geyser, but that crit probably making a pretty significant difference there, as Colossal does get its boosts, but it's at much lower HP than I think they would like. That said, Goodra Dynamaxing does mean no Max Airstream on the other side. Primarina throws a Moonblast into Goodra, gets the special attack drop. That could be pretty big, depending on the Goodra set. Maybe offset that crit. Colossal goes for the Gigantamax, even though it's at low HP. Looking for that Volcalith damage, I'm sure. Salamence protects. Colossal goes for the Volcalith. It still does 70% to Salamence, and that Volcalith residual damage is going to add up. So that is a 1-turn Dynamax with no immediate KOs for the Espurr, but still feels like there's a good chance it's worth it. As Primarina throws another Moonblast at Goodra and gets the drop again. All kinds of stuff flying back and forth in this game, but also throughout this week. We see the Espurr hit the field. The mascot is here. What have they got with it? Salamence goes for double protect. It fails. Espurr clicks Ally Switch. Takes the Max Ooze for Primarina. It's probably special, right? So the special attack drops will come into play there. Espurr only takes 30%. Primarina gets to throw a Moonblast into Salamence. This is Gen 8 Ally Switch. They can keep clicking it if they want, so it's a mind game from here. Gyarados is on the field. Primarina has like no attacks to that left, but didn't really want one anyway. We see Espurr helping hand. Primarina takes the Iron Head. It's Sludge Wave from the Goodra, but after those special attack drops, it's not enough to get a KO. In fact, they poison their own Gyarados and also the Espurr, and then they drop Life Orb damage. Primarina Moonblast almost takes out the Gyarados. Poison will do the rest. That is friendly fire there. Technically, Goodra knocking out its own teammate. And all that's left is Arcanine against Primarina. Not ideal for the Absols. They go for extreme speed, but it still doesn't get the KO. Those Moonblast drops... Oh, Espurr goes for Trick. Gives a TR38 to Arcanine. I did know that one was coming. It takes away a Citrus Berry, so it gets a bit of recovery. Nice healthy cat there. Arcanine will knock out the Primarina. So Primarina won't quite finish the sweep here, as Extreme Speed does go before Ally Switch there, but now Rillaboom comes in. And with Helping Hand, that's Gen 8 Grassy Glide. It had its power nerfed in Scarlet and Violet for a reason. Arcanine was at 70%, but Helping Hand boosted Grassy Glide was enough to take it out. So we saw the Colossal put in a ton of work in Game 1. The Primarina put in a ton of work in Game 2. The story here really might be the Espurr. The Espurr went nuts in this set as well, but yeah, that is the power of Colossal, Primarina, and Rillaboom. That is a heck of a core for any opponent taking on the East Coast Espurr to have to deal with. The Colossal sweep in Game 1 was, I think, a message to the entire league. And admittedly, the Moonblast drops into Primarina, or into Goodra, seemed to make a significant difference in this game. So a little bit of luck for the East Coast Espurr there, but still a hard team to deal with. Up next, we have Pendragon United taking on the Bashful Bisharps. The Bisharps have their own Weather Fossil duo of Alolan Ninetales and Arctozolt. They also have that Tapu Koko setting up electric terrain that powers up itself and Arctozolt, and also denies Exeggutor Sleep Powder. Not that Pendragon United brought Exeggutor this week, but of course they could have. And also Tapu Koko just gives them terrain control if Pendragon United bring Tapu Lele, which they also didn't do. But Tapu Koko makes a lot of sense here. It's also just an offensive threat into Charizard, so it does a lot in this matchup. They have Celesteela, which is not likely to have a great time against Charizard, Ninetales, and Raichu, but it is strong into things like Leafeon, Exeggutor, and Tapu Lele. So multiple Tapu Lele answers, but no Tapu Lele to be seen. Terrakion is an offensive threat into the fire types, but is itself somewhat threatened by very threatened by Pheromosa. And even like Scraggy Intimidate could mess with Terrakion. They also can go slow if they want. They have Slowking, able to set Trick Room. So a couple different ways they can approach the speed control game. They have just naturally fast Pokemon in Tapu Koko. Terrakion's fairly fast too. They could go Trick Room mode with Slowking, which could be helpful in a speed swap Pheromosa or something like that. And they also, of course, if they can get weather control. We do have a Ninetales versus Ninetales weather war here, by the way. If they get that weather control, they can have Arctozolt go zooming with Slush Rush. On the Pendragon United side, considering all the answers to Tapu Lele and Exeggutor, I guess it's not surprising that we don't see them here. Scraggy with Intimidate and Eviolite Bulk could actually be pretty menacing into Pokemon like Arctozolt and Terrakion, although it does have to watch out for Ninetales Moonblast. Raichu with Lightning Rod is actually a giant threat to Arctozolt as well, because it can nullify Bolt Beak, in the same way that Gastrodon deals with Vicious Rend. And that's also an issue for Tapu Koko, and it's an offensive threat into Celesteela and Slowking. So actually Raichu could put in a lot of work here, but of course the weather trio of Ninetales, Charizard, and Leafeon are worth a lot of attention here, and so is the Pheromosa, which can outspeed anything in this matchup, barring whatever kind of speed control the Bisharps want to throw at them. Game 1 gives us no Tapu Lele. We almost had opposite teams. They almost did. Ninetales versus Ninetales. Weather Speed Boost versus Weather Speed Boost. Ultra Beast versus Ultra Beast. They could have had Tapu versus Tapu, but I do think I understand why the Lele isn't here. We get Shiny Arctozolt once again. I really like this Shiny. I don't think I had noticed it before week 1. Leading with Tapu Koko against Charizard and Raichu. So, bit of a tricky position for both players. Actually, not really. I was going to say Charizard is offensively threatened, but it's not, because the reason it's tricky for the Bisharps is that all of their electric attacks are just eaten up by Raichu if they go for them. So Charizard is actually kind of free to threaten massive damage into these two. Turn 1. We see Tapu Koko switch out to Ninetales. Arctozolt Dynamaxes. Is it going to go for a Max Hailstorm to try to get Charizard with that? Charizard Gigantamaxes. Raichu goes for Fake Out into Arctozolt. That will not get the flinch because Arctozolt is Dynamaxed. And instead we see Max Quake into Raichu. Okay, try to just wipe out the Raichu quickly so that both these guys can click electric attacks into Charizard. I do understand that, but they are leaving themselves open to a G-Max Wildfire. It goes into Ninetales. The residual damage will knock it out. And so Pendragon United have secured weather control for this game. Sure enough, they bring in their own Ninetales. They get the Sun. Tapu Koko is here, though. There are electric type attacks being threatened into this Charizard. We see Scraggy switch in. We see Max Guard from Charizard. Tapu Koko Thunderbolt does a lot of damage to Scraggy, but doesn't KO. And what are they cooking with that Scraggy? Let's find out. Fake out into Tapu Koko. Oh, it's probably as simple as that, huh? Fake out into Tapu Koko. Yeah, and then with Sun up instead of Snow, the Arctozolt is slower than Charizard, so they just have to make the Koko flinch. They know it can't Dynamax because the Arctozolt already Dynamaxed. And Arctozolt drops before it gets... Even though they took out the Raichu turn 1, Arctozolt drops before it gets a chance to do any damage with a Max Lightning. It didn't even click a Max Lightning. Actually, Charizard Max Guard stopped Hailstorm, trying to set the Hail back up last game. I think I said Snow earlier. It is Hail in this generation. And so Charizard using that Max Guard to stay faster and one-shot the Arctozolt. Well, it taking a little bit of damage, but, you know, knock out the Arctozolt. Tapu Koko's still a threat. Terrakion's still a threat. Charizard is in a lot of danger here, but it's probably done all the work it needs to do. That said, they do still have 2 fire types against Terrakion, and then Scraggy has taken a bunch of damage, and there's a fairy here, so it's still not the easiest thing for Pendragon United. Charizard protects. Ninetales switches back in. Survives a Rock Slide, but pretty narrowly, and will the Dazzling Gleam knock it out? It will. That gives Scraggy a chance to come back in and intimidate Terrakion, but then... What, Scraggy loses to Dazzling Gleam? Nope, it fakes out Tapu Koko. There's the Rock Slide, and there's the Charty Berry on Charizard. Charizard gets one chance to survive a Rock Slide. What does it do with it? Knocks out Tapu Koko. That Heat Wave connecting is huge because Scraggy can probably beat Terrakion from here. If Terrakion is not choiced, then it can, like, click Fighting Move into Scraggy. But it does go for Rock Slide. It might be choiced. And in any case, Charizard now shows the Solar Beam and takes out Terrakion. So, solid positioning and good target choices from Pendragon United all the way through there. And that Charty Berry, which we did sort of expect to see very often throughout the season, because clicking Rock-type attacks into Charizard is the easiest way to clear it most of the time, does save the game for them here in what admittedly looked like kind of a tricky endgame against Terrakion. Terrakion was well positioned to be an endgame threat, but Scraggy and the Charty Berry were just enough after Charizard maneuvered things so well against Arctozolt earlier. Let's see if Hail can turn things around against Sun, though, in Game 2. Let's see if Alolan Ninetales can find the adjustment to overcome Cantonian Ninetales. We see Ninetales and Arctozolt leading against Charizard and Raichu, I believe. Note these are not the same leads as Game 1. It was Tapu Koko instead of Ninetales in Game 1. Arctozolt goes straight for the Dynamax again. Will it try to knock out Raichu turn 1 so that it can click Max Lightning? The other thing, though, with Dynamaxing Arctozolt is that it's the same kind of problem as Dracovish, where a lot of the time you'd probably rather be clicking Bolt Beak instead of Max Lightning. But the Max Quake is obviously valuable to them, but, well, it's valuable for knocking out Raichu. We know it doesn't help them take a hit from Charizard. Anyway, we see the same Dynamax as turn 1 as before. This time it's Max Hailstorm into Charizard turn 1. Raichu gets a chance to click Nuzzle into Ninetales, paralyzing it. Charizard goes for Max Airstream into Ninetales, not KOing, but getting speed boosts. And that's another way for Charizard to position itself well against this Arctozolt, boosting its own speed. Raichu Thunderbolt takes out Ninetales. Raichu now the fastest Pokemon this next turn. G-Max Wildfire does not KO Arctozolt, but it does a lot of damage. There's the Max Quake taking out the Raichu, but Raichu got to take out Alolan Ninetales in exchange, and so... there's one more chance for this team to click Max Hailstorm, and otherwise Pendragon United is weather control for the rest of the game. They do bring the Ninetales in here. We see Tapu Koko. Sun and Electric Terrain both up. The G-Max Wildfire takes out Tapu Koko. Ninetales outspeeds Arctozolt in Sun, and Overheat knocks it out. There will not be a Max Hailstorm, and already we see it's Eject Pack Ninetales, so it switches itself out to Scraggy. There is just one Pokemon remaining already for the Bashful Bisharps. If it's Terrakion, it will not. I believe it will not get intimidated by Scraggy coming out first here, but it's still not super well positioned against Scraggy. Instead, it's actually Slowking. That's going to take a Solar Beam to the face immediately. Sure enough, almost KOs. Thanks to that Solar Power. Slowking gets taunted, so it can't try to set Trick Room or something and turn things around. Scald takes out Charizard, but the G-Max Wildfire, Burning Flames finish off the Slowking. Charizard getting that last KO from Beyond the Grave. And this has been a good week outside of Monday's video. This has been a good week for the big Gigantamax threats. Colossal and Charizard absolutely popping off in some of these sets. Cantonian Ninetales defeating its Alolan cousin in the showdown here. Of course, lots more Pokemon for all these teams to play over the course of the season. Who knows? Maybe we get a playoff rematch. Could happen. One set left. It was actually just played today on the day that I'm recording. I didn't think I was going to record this, but then they played. So I still get to do this today. We've got Lunala Plaza taking on the Ontario Oguris. Ontario bringing the mascot, Minccino, along with Pelipper, Alolan Raichu, Rapid Striker, Shifu, Crobat, and Heracross. No Pincursion this time, so no manual electric terrain for the Raichu. It still could, Dynamax and Click Max Lightning to set up a Surge Surfer or something. But we do have that menace of a rain duo of Pelipper and Rapid Strike or Shifu. Looking to put in work once again. Who knows what the Minccino is here for? Maybe they talked with the Espurr about both of them bringing their mascots this season. This week. I wouldn't put that past them. On the Lunala Plaza side, Araquanid is in theory pretty strong in rain. It is offensively threatened by 2 flying types and a Raichu, so it might be hard to position. But they have a possible Trick Room mode with that and Carbink that could be pretty strong into this fast offensive team, and also with Indeedee. Reminder, female Indeedee does not get Trick Room itself in this generation, but it could redirect a threat and enable Carbink to set up Trick Room. They also have the Blacephalon, which looks to do big explosive damage, but that's going to be hard to do, I think, into this Ontario Oguris lineup. They have the Zarude, which is massively threatened by Pelipper and Crobat, and also the fighting type or Shifu. It beats Raichu, I guess, but actually most of this team is a threat to Zarude. I'm not sure we'll see Zarude come to a game. But there's also the Shedinja here, and you know what? Shedinja actually looks really interesting in this matchup because it walls Rapid Strike or Shifu, and depending on their set, it walls Rapid Strike or Shifu, it walls Alolan Raichu, and depending on their set, it might wall Heracross. It hard loses to Pelipper and Crobat. A lot of this team has trouble with Pelipper and Crobat, so a lot might come down to how Lunala Plaza is prepared to deal with those. Maybe we'll see the Carbink do something other than just set Trick Room. But Rapid Strike or Shifu might not get to just sweep with Shedinja around and Araquanid. Let's see. Carbink leading with Indeedee against Urshifu and Heracross, so it does look to me like that Trick Room setup. Urshifu Dynamaxes immediately, once again not running Gigantamax. I do not remember what Gigantamax Urshifu does. Maybe it can hit through Max Guard? That would make sense, considering its whole deal. But if that's the case, then you probably would rather set up Rain with your Water-type Max move, right? So I don't know if we'll ever see G-Max Rapid Strike or Shifu. In any case, a Dynamax is here immediately. Indeedee goes for Follow Me. It takes the Max Geyser and gets forced out by an eject button. So we get Araquanid on the field immediately. Okay. Close combat into Carbink. Carbink is bulky and a fairy type, so not super effective into this rock, and no problem setting the Trick Room up. And now they have Araquanid in Trick Room immediately. That eject button play looks like it worked like a charm. Heracross gets a burn because it has Flame Orb because it's running Guts. Araquanid goes for Endure, and Carbink goes for Skill Swap, giving either Clear Body or Sturdy to Araquanid and taking away what is presumably Water Bubble. Whatever I thought Araquanid was going to do, probably just click Liquidation. It was certainly not this. Endure will guarantee it survives the turn, but at what cost? We see Rock Slide from the Heracross. Misses both targets. Okay. It's Water Absorb Araquanid. It doesn't have Water Bubble. The Carbink has taken Water Absorb, and the Oguris do no damage this turn. Mostly because Rock Slide missed both targets, which is pretty unfortunate for them, but that Skill Swap play works like a charm as Carbink is actually healed by the Max Geyser. What do they have to follow it up? Switch out to Shedinja. They gave Carbink Water Absorb in front of Rapid Strike or Shifu, and then they switched it out. Okay. And they have Sturdy Shedinja. That's what they cooked. The point of that was not to give Water Absorb to Carbink. It was to give Sturdy to Araquanid and give Sturdy to Shedinja. Shedinja? Okay, do I remember how this works? Shedinja has 1 hit point. By taking away Wonder Guard is his usual ability, right? It cannot be damaged by any moves that are not super effective. That's probably why Shedinja isn't in Scarlet and Violet, because imagine being able to Terrastalize that. Sorry, it can't be damaged by any attacks that aren't super effective. And Fire Fang in Gen 4, because there was a bug, and Fire Fang just always hits through wide guard. Super effective into Shedinja anyway, but if you hack Wonder Guard. If you hack Wonder Guard onto a different Pokemon in Gen 4, it'll still be hit by Fire Fang. There's some obscure trivia from back in the day. But swap that out for Sturdy, and because Shedinja, as a trade-off for Wonder Guard being kind of broken, can only ever have 1 hit point no matter what. And Sturdy always preserves the Pokemon at 1 HP. If it's hit by an attack that would knock it out, Sturdy Shedinja can be hit by things like that Max Geyser in a close combat from Heracross. No, it's a Ghost type. It can be hit by like a Mega Horn from Heracross. But it cannot be knocked out directly by an attack like that, ever. Because it just goes down from 1 HP to 1 HP. Forever. Shedinja is vulnerable to residual damage. You can burn it, you can poison it, you can set up a Sandstorm or Hail. Or G-Max Wildfire or something. It'll always faint to those things, but does Ontario have something like that? Let's see. I was wondering what on earth they were cooking with this setup, but Sturdy Shedinja might actually just hard counter this whole team. It might not have any need to be afraid of... It's probably not afraid of Pelipper anymore. Crobat might be able to poison it, but that might be the only plausible threat they have. Max Knuckle. Shedinja's still immune because it's a Ghost type. They're trying to hit Carbank. Dynamax is over for the Oguris. Lunala Plaza also still has Dynamax available. Crobat comes in. Can it poison the Shedinja? Shedinja Dynamaxes. Max Phantasm. There's a lot of damage to Crobat. And Trick Room is still up, by the way, and Crobat is a fast Pokemon. Liquidation does not quite KO the Heracross. And look at that. Rock Slide. Does a lot of damage to Araquanid. Doesn't quite KO. Araquanid is a tanky Pokemon. But also... And remember, Araquanid clicked entrainment, not skill swap, so it does not have Wonder Guard. This is super effective anyway, but it has Sturdy as well. Not going to be useful. But we see the Sturdy Shedinja right there. Takes the Rock Slide. Takes 1 damage, because that's what HP it has. Survives at 1 HP, because it's Sturdy. Heracross drops his Spurn. Trick Room is still up. If Shedinja knocks out Crobat, or Araquanid knocks out Crobat, that's probably just GG. I don't think Raichu has a way through this. It just drops to a Max Phantasm anyway. I don't think Urshifu has a way through this. Trick Room's over. I don't think it matters. Carbank switches in on close combat. Takes that no problem. Max Phantasm. Doesn't quite KO. But what does Urshifu have? Surging Strikes is not going to do anything. Surging Strikes will hit Shedinja 3 times, but it will do functionally 0 damage. Ever. Night Slash takes out Urshifu. Sturdy Shedinja is so broken in this matchup. Now I know if I ever play this team, I have to have an answer to that. It completely got... I didn't remember that Araquanid got entrainment. It completely got past me in the draft. They were probably cooking this the whole draft. They were talking about having some combos that they were cooking up. Completely got by me. I don't know if I play this team. But if I do, I have to be ready. What do I have on my team for this? Doesn't matter right now. Let's watch game 2. Indeedee, Carbank. Here we go again. Raichu, Urshifu. I think if they successfully execute the Sturdy Shedinja setup, the only thing that might be able to beat it is... Crobat. Depending on what moves it has. Sorry, I was noticing the Expanding Force. Expanding Force does a lot of damage to Carbank, and actually Surging Strikes will knock out Carbank, so they will not get the Sturdy Shedinja this game. They definitely went for it again. Here's the Shedinja. So that's the other way to do it. Get the spread damage from Raichu Expanding Force, use the terrain that Indeedee set up for you, and just do too much damage to the Carbank. Right, Urshifu Dynamaxing Urshifu Dynamaxing turn 1, game 1, and being redirected into attacking Indeedee meant that it wasn't able to hit Carbank. So there are other ways to beat this. You can deny the setup. Shedinja using Endure, by the way. Getting through a turn here, but Crobat obviously a giant threat. It has Dynamaxed. That Max Airstream takes out Shedinja. Would also have taken out Araquanid, but instead Araquanid ally switches out of there, but drops to a Rock Slide from Heracross. So, I mean, there's not even much analysis that can be done with this matchup at this point, right? Like, maybe we see a different game plan in Game 3, but so far it's been Lunala Plaza goes for the sturdy Shedinja setup. If they get it, they win. If they don't get it, they just are overwhelmed by the offensive pressure from Ontario. Will we see more of the same in Game 3? So far, the story of the set has been either the setup works or it doesn't, and the whole game hinges on that. It is Carbink and Indeedee once again, this time against Pelipper and Raichu. We know the expanding force. We know expanding force into water attack should take out the Carbink, so is there another plan that Lunala Plaza is running here, or are they all in on Carbink just somehow surviving this? They fake out the Raichu in their own psychic terrain. Oh, that's a rough one. I had trouble with that for a long time when I was new to this game. I would run... when I was playing Gen 8 VGC, I would run fake out on Indeedee because I forgot my own psychic terrain stopped it. I specifically feel like I cannot blame a person for having trouble with that interaction because it used to trip me up all the time. And it did for a long time, even when I wasn't such a new player anymore. That said, Panda, if you see this, the most painful part of the whole thing, it would have worked into Pelipper. Flying types aren't protected by terrain. You could have faked out the Pelipper. Sorry to be the one to tell you, if nobody else has already. People have been spoiler tagging this set in the Discord when they talk about what happened because they didn't want me to know before I watched the replay. Now I understand why with the sturdy Shedinja, but I'm going to go read the discussion as soon as I'm done recording. But if nobody else told you before, you could have faked out the Pelipper. Sorry. Also, Pelipper could have Dynamaxed and not been flinched, but it didn't, so yeah, it would have worked. Covert Cloak does not exist in Gen 8. That's not what this was. Sorry. Here's the Shedinja. The setup has failed. I think we know how this one turns out. Shifu coming in on the Liquidation. And the Max Phantasm takes a lot of damage from that. But Shedinja will once again drop to any super effective hit. That said, I'm not sure they have one on the field right now. Heracross Dynamaxes. It has Max Rock Fall. Of course, we knew it had Rock Slide. Never mind. The Sandstorm chip will actually knock out Shedinja here. Which also would have worked if it had Sturdy, so actually they did have another way to beat it, even if the setup worked besides Crobat, so... Oh, is it Safety Goggles Shedinja? Never mind, actually Sandstorm would not have beaten it. So if the setup successfully worked, I think it is just a question of whether Crobat has, like, Toxic. And even then, I keep talking that up because it's the only thing I can think of, but there's a good chance it doesn't. I'm not sure anything was beating Shedinja Game 1. Yeah, if it's Safety Goggles Shedinja, it won't take damage from the Sandstorm. And clearly, that's the case. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to get Sturdy onto it. Oh, it was so close. Yeah, okay. I am scared of this game plan if I play this team. I'm going to have to prepare for it specifically. But it is also, we saw here, hard to pull off in 2 out of 3 games. Game 1 worked like a charm. They didn't manage it again, but it was so close. Fake out into Pelipper. Would have been stopped by Pelipper Dynamax, but they didn't do it. Almost there. Shedinja went crazy, but it almost went crazier. And this whole league keeps going crazy every single week. The techs have just been nuts. Week 1, Week 2. There are still 6 more weeks of regular season and then playoffs. We saw Yawns flying around. There were so many of them in the early sets, and I almost forgot because of all the weird stuff that happened after. We saw copycat shenanigans. We saw skill swaps traded back and forth. We saw Ninetales Weather War. We saw Sturdy Shedinja. This season has been something else so far. We're only 2 weeks in, so if you're watching this, definitely stick around because it is going to be a wild ride. See you next week.